All right, guys, so picture this. I'm hauling gear, hauling furniture, trying to turn a blank canvas into a 5-star Airbnb, setting up a remote Airbnb all in one weekend. So in this episode, we're breaking down the chaos, the pivots, and what truly happened in order to get this latest remote property build set up. So stick around till the end. We're dropping our biggest lesson learned and how you can implement that lesson in the future for yourselves.
All right, guys, that was Alex Asta. I'm George Koutros. We're the B&B Guardians. And, we do these videos to bring people into our fold and showcase what we've learned, what we've earned, so you don't have to do it the hard way. We're going to take all the lessons learned from, the plan going in, the what we had to change, what actually happened, the reality, and the big takeaways from this build. And we're gonna basically debrief as we would in our company. We're gonna hot wash the whole thing right here on this video call with Alex and myself, so you guys can see it and take some tips away, and hopefully not make the same mistakes. And yet, please stick around to the end, because we're gonna give away the #1 lesson that cost us money and cost us pain, so it doesn't cost you money and won't cost you pain. All right, you ready, Al? Ready to kick it off?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right, sweet. Okay, cool. So I was thinking we just follow the standard, like we'll debrief it, figure it out, and we'll just go over with what we went going in, our kind of plan, going into this, and how very quickly the plan changed
on day
because
one.
Man proposes and God disposes. All right.
Yeah. So day one. So what were we originally planning, right? So we were originally planning that Caroline and I would go down there on a Friday evening and start to get the truck unloaded. And this was a U-Haul, right? So there's a ton of boxes. We waited for, this is intentional, we waited for everything to arrive, so that way we could bring everything down there at once, because this property was 3 hours away. So on the day, so what we were originally planning, drive down there Friday evening, get the boxes unloaded, stay up until as late as we could, as late as we could bear, and get the truck unloaded and kind of get started organizing. And then day 2 on Saturday was going to be a long, 15, 17, 18-hour day, getting things complete in that day. And then on the third day on Sunday, finishing, maybe some walkthrough videos, kind of fine-tuning some things. So that was the goal.
And
reality,
it was a good goal.
On paper, great goal.
Yeah, of course. And these things, made possible simply because of the fact that we've done so many builds and so many units that we have pretty good SOPs for the build. We have our checklists, we have our spreadsheets that we do for all the orders. We make sure everything is consolidated in boxes, and everything that we need is getting there, so we only have to do the big stuff once. So we make sure all the stuff arrives, like you said, we have it going, we're getting ready to go. What made this setup slightly different is that it is, a 3.5-hour drive from where you live. So we had to factor that. It's not a simple 20 minute to 60-minute drive from your house. So it's, easy to go back and forth. Everything needed to be done, one time to make sure it worked. So going in, we were doing this onboarding for a client, and we were like, okay, cool. We charged them, hey, $2,000 for an onboarding. Thought it was very fair considering the time and all the bandwidth it would take. We soon found out we underbid ourselves egregiously, ended up working for something what was like $5 an hour, and still, because we still have to do other parts of the onboarding. So really underbid ourselves there. And that comes to some of the thing of, we're a small property management company. We aren't thinking about, demanding these crazy high prices, but when you do stuff like this, you have to factor that and charge a fair price for your time, because it's not just the money and the resources that you're expending and not the fixed costs, it's the fact hours and hours of time. So we factor that in, and that was our plan going in, and we had that margin that we were gonna make a little extra money for the business. What happened that really threw a wrench in that, Alex?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that happened, so day 1, so Friday, midday, loading the truck, right? So that is where on day 1, it would start, I wouldn't say it went downhill, but it just changed, right? So plan changed immediately. So halfway, almost, a little more than halfway through loading the truck, I had tweaked my lower back. So, which happens to me once every 4 years or so.
Good.
Perfect timing, love it. Perfect timing that this was on this particular day. And so that's what kind of shifted things. immediately when that happened, I knew, this is about to be physically a painful weekend. I will not be able to be on my hands and knees assembling furniture like we were originally planning on. I knew it would not be possible for me, given that lower back pain that I've experienced multiple times in the past. So I knew how this was going to go. So right away, okay, what's the next option? All right, well, we need to hire people to help with the furniture assembly and lifting some of these heavy boxes. I can still sit down. And so another thing we did, which actually I like this idea anyway for just other properties, even if your back is not hurting you, but bringing a folding table. We brought an 8-foot long folding table with 2 chairs, which is also helpful for just like tools and things. You don't want to put different things on like nice new coffee tables or kitchen tables or countertops. You have a rough, it's okay to beat it up, folding table that you can put tools on and whatever other stuff. So that was actually, while we brought that for my convenience, so I could sit down and still assemble things and do that. That ended up being a positive, just that I think we'll end up doing in the future anyway.
Takeaway then would be like bring something to organize your stuff, staging areas, and that way you're not, why blow out your back doing the build or the setup too either, like make it easy, make it make sense, and then have that going. Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. And then I guess another one is if you're gonna enter into amateur twerking contests in DC, you better have some handymen that can come when you blow your back out.
And it's coming.
No, it didn't. Yeah. So whatever your hobbies are, save your body when you can. So yeah, then that's like a lesson that we have to keep teaching ourselves. And I think this is probably holds true for most, novice entrepreneurs is time is worth more than money, which we fully subscribe to. But when you're there and you're like, do we pay for the laborers or we just do it ourselves? Out of necessity now you had to get the people. And if you would have been even more
with some things, and I'm so glad we did, because looking back, the amount of time, and we hired 2 guys, the amount of time that they spent, and I know what, like the furniture that they assembled and what they did and carrying this and that, it was a huge help. And I might still be there right now. If we, here we are on Monday, I might still be there right now if they had not come to help on Saturday.
Sure.
Because, with or without, back, kind of injury going on, they helped a lot. So, definitely spending some money to get help with physical labor, assembly, furniture assembly, things like that is a huge help. So,
and the big thing with furniture, and I'll hit this lesson, and kind of the role that we played. You're there in person, back here in California. Can't really do much to help with the build, but for logistics and talking with Kate, our designer, also my wife, the way that she picks furniture is by looking at the reviews, going through, making sure it's, 1, does it look nice? 2, is it affordable? 3, does it have a ton of overwhelming good reviews, and read the reviews and actually see what they talk about. But even when you do that, there's still some things that sneak by, and I'll talk about the dressers of doom. You can't really forecast that a dresser is going to take 8 man hours to assemble from people who are not like unfamiliar with, handiwork and assembling things. So like these very difficult to maneuver, manipulate dressers now have made our, shit list of furniture that we will not be ordering again, just because the sheer time it takes to order them.
Yeah. And I recall from not even one of our properties, but from a friend who had started an Airbnb, and of course forgot about this, but I remember him saying that it was some sort of dresser or clothing storage, kind of deal, an armoire, something like that. And he was saying the same thing. Yeah, that was a nightmare to assemble. Thank God I had help to do it, but even still, it seemed to just take forever. So I think, I wasn't, certainly wasn't upset that we chose this dresser. I feel like a lot of dressers, a lot of things like that, they just have so many pieces, it can just take forever. So, which is also why, and honestly, the only reason we ended up getting dressers for this particular property is because of the build, there were no available closets. There's no closets, not one. So out of necessity, we had to have some sort of dresser, with clothing storage available for the guests, since they could not have hangers with closets to keep any clothes in there. So always, if you do have closet space, utilize that, use hangers. If you have other space, use a clothing storage rack, for suitcases. But for aesthetics, of course, no shade to the design team, but the designers love, okay, aesthetically, that looks great, do it. Okay, build team, that's on you, go.
Yeah. Sometimes the build team gets bent over a barrel and they get their back blown out more than once.
So you know what, these things happen, but it looks great. So I think certainly the lesson there for us, as a whole, is like, okay, even in these things don't always happen in this order, but if you can, figure out what that design is going to be. And then as you are figuring out what your onboarding fee is going to be, that you're going to be charging to the client, you have to factor that in. Hey, is this something that we can, and this is a big lesson learned, is this something that we can feasibly assemble ourselves? Like, without paying anyone except ourselves? Or do we no, there's how many bedrooms is it? How many square feet? How many things of furniture do we need to assemble? And then kind of go from there. So there's a lot to consider. And like you said earlier, we're not some massive property management company that claims to have every possible little detail worked out to the T. But we enjoy what we do, and there's always lessons learned on every single build. We're always getting better, but there's always something unique that happens that you can take away from it.
And each property is different, and then especially this one where it's like, okay, it's almost worse than, like, for instance, a completely remote build, because for a fact you're not going to be going. This is like this in between where it's like still it's far away, and you can't go back and forth, but you're still expected to go. And like the owner, we're still working with the owner about us moving forward. When we approach things like this, what are, from your perspective of having been there past weekend, 48 hours working, what are some like concrete things for a fact, hey, if we do this next time, or we're going to do something like this where it's traveling to a destination to set it up, these things need to be in place. These are the people that we're going to need to have to help on, there's some left and right lateral limits that we can set up.
So definitely some things you want to consider, like in this case, if a property is 3 hours away ahead of time, if you can, you need to start making contacts with people in that area. You need to have your stuff lined up, someone to cut the grass, someone to, do it all handyman, your cleaner, backup plumber, all these things, right? And so those are things you should be doing for any property, but it becomes even more important when it's 3 hours away, or if it's 3 states away and you're not going to be going to the property at all. So, could I go to this property that's 3 hours away? Like anytime? Okay, it needs to be scheduled, but yeah, I could drive there, right? That's a big thing, but could you? Yes. If it's 3 states away, you're not going to be going to the property for some day-to-day type thing. So having that discussion with your team, having that discussion with the owner, regardless of where they live, but making sure everyone's on the same page. Hey, when this happens, here's how we respond to it. When this happens, we respond this way. So I would say, having that open communication, with yourself, with your team, and then with the client as well. And
you hit that, and if we're looking at the build phase of these things, like, we got to build out these, these teams have to be established, but even on the, like, a fundamental, like, building the unit, I would say if you're doing it for yourself, guess what? You're going to go and do it however it needs to get done. If you're doing it for other, if you're doing it as a part of a management co-host deal, you're still going to do it until it gets done, but like terms need to be set up. So it's like, so they understand, hey, you can't just work, on tap free labor for weeks getting something set up remotely. It becomes unattainable for, the business to do that. It literally becomes impossible. So yeah, you got to think a little more, and that'll play into what we talked about at the end, but yeah, you got to forecast out a little better when you're doing builds like these, where it's in that in-between and you're not completely doing it remote, and there's stuff that you're going to be doing there in person. So, all right, awesome. Okay, Alex, what about, the physical build stuff as you're going through and doing anything crazy that jumps out at you that was, unique, especially since you had the opportunity? I know you're still in there in the trenches putting stuff together, and you kind of had yourself, pulled out a little bit to do more of that managerial gaze upon the fields. What was happening? So,
one thing that I would say was different this time than other even recent property builds is in the background doing 2 things. So focusing on, like, being the manager, right? Also working with the owner, discussing some different things as we're doing it. That's great, no issues. But I would say just overall managing your time. So in managing, am I going to be a worker, right? And so doing both, wearing both of those hats, and also, because there are plenty of things that I was physically doing to keep the ball moving forward. There's simultaneously answering questions, from everybody, and being that manager to keep the ball moving forward over the course of 2.5 days. And also yet a different spot, trying to think in a different way to also record some content while we're doing it, right? So, really thinking in a few different ways. I would say it was different for me this time than it was just that last part. It's like, okay, we need to record some things, we need to manage some things, we need to do some things. So there's like multiple jobs. And I think that's certainly true for any entrepreneurs. Like sometimes you can find yourself like in any given day, especially in the early stages of a business and we're there now, before you can hire, a fancy operations manager, before you can hire the marketing guy and the, HR, whatever it is, you're doing everything, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say that was probably the biggest challenge that I faced this weekend, is really trying to be the best in managing my time to try to achieve all of these things. We did, but it's just like, okay, did I get as many videos recorded as I wanted? No. Did we got labor-wise, everything got completed that we wanted to, worked a handful of hours more on the Sunday than I was anticipating, but everything got done that we were expecting to get done. So At the end of the day, that's what's important. Everything got done. And so, that much closer to that property being launched. So
there's something that you got to leverage. There's something that we both leverage, and it is common across whether you're doing, any other business or Airbnb. But when you start off and you're brand new at these things and you don't have a massive team, and yes, our team has grown, but there are a couple employees under the table paid employees that we've had from the start that make this stuff possible. And it's leveraging that free labor and manipulating those we love to help us out. So I'm talking about using our wives. So I would say when you're first starting off, it's free labor. Great, you don't have to pay them. Well, you do have to pay, but it comes, it's probably honestly way more expensive than hiring an employee. But, you get the point. You already made that commitment long ago. So, you take your wife out with you. In your case, Carolina helps out with these builds, goes out and shopping with some stuff, and is there to kind of, help you when you're at these units with whatever you need. And remotely over here, we got Kate. She's helping out with, the design, helping planning the design and interfacing with clients that way. This is a hack, if you will, for you guys that would absolutely help when you're first starting off. Get people that you can trust that, and if you don't have a wife, maybe you have a buddy that you can pay in like a 30 rack or something to help out building out a unit. Or maybe you have a friend that's really good with some certain technological XYZ that you can help leverage in the beginning when you're starting off. It's how you can, there's always a way to start. So if you feel completely inundated with tasks and things to do and there's not enough time, a way that we overcame it, what worked for us, and it just so happened that we're lucky, we have, two amazing wives that can help us do this stuff. So just a little nugget there for you guys when you're like, how do you do this all when you have another job and you got other things going on, other responsibilities and commitments? The best way to do it is to find other people to help you. So that's a quick little caveat. I figure it's worth mentioning because we would probably not be able to do it.
I would not have been able to do everything this weekend without Carolina being there, right? Mm-hmm. Even before we arrived, when we were still driving there, hey, and that's when I was driving like with a hurt back, like really at my, top of the line for pain. It was on Friday. And she said, oh, we need to stop and get groceries. I'm like, no, please, like not one more thing. Let's just get there. Come on, let's just get there. We don't need that. We can do this instead. Nope. Okay, just sit down and shut up. All right, fine. You know what? I'm in pain. I'm not going into the grocery store. I'm in pain. I'm just sitting here. And guess what? There's breakfast being made on Saturday and Sunday. So I was already getting started with the property, and Carolina's getting breakfast started, made. It's like, that was awesome. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have eaten anything, until Chipotle for lunch or whatever, But even outside of breakfast, there were so many things that she was doing to help. So all weekend, and we were counting. We always like to count up. This was probably the first This is probably the first property in a long time that we actually did not, the two of us did not physically assemble the bed frames. We counted up one time in the last like 2.5 years, almost 3 years now, we probably assembled like 10 bed frames, maybe a little more. And this was the first property in a while that we did not have to do that, because we actually, out of necessity, did have to hire labor to help. So, the guys ended up doing that while we were working on other stuff. So,
and that's, I would say the progression, natural progression, and we're kind of right at that precipice, which is we do in the past. We don't always do stuff ourselves. We hired like people from TaskRabbit to help out with labor, but we're coming up on the point here where we can start justifying that our time can actually be spent elsewhere making more money. So, things like going back to just us debriefing, Alex, like I'd say going forward, if you look at what the hourly rate is for the laborer to do stuff and you're going to be there from a managerial perspective, well, might as well just like hire a few, like you could spend a weekend there, or you could hire a team of 3 dudes and get it done in one day, and you're the manager watching. It might be worth in the future getting it done quicker. If we know, that next day, those 12 hours, you could spend doing something else, which has much more yield, right? Like finding one more management deal, it pays off.
And I think the way to do that, like the way to really make sure, because you could do that. Let's say, whatever the size of the property is, let's say it's a 2-bedroom unit. And you could hire 3 guys and everything could get done in one day. The only thing I would add to that is everyone needs to know their job, and put the people in the position where they perform best. I just couldn't bend over to do the bed frames and dressers. So the more complicated things or more time consuming things, we had the guys do that. But what I would add is, if you want to get everything done in one day, figure out what all of your handyman related tasks are. Like that might be a little bit more skilled than just furniture assembly. Let's say, like if someone's bringing their own tools, like a handyman, have them install the smart lock, have them install doorknobs, have them install, curtain, shower curtain rods and, curtain rods and all these types of things. Anything that requires a little bit more expertise, make sure everyone knows what they're doing when they get there. So that way you're not being pulled to answer questions all day long. Because you also, again, you need to be a manager, you can do those, you can answer questions. But if you also have a list of things that you need to do and you're constantly being pulled away from it, that's probably the only thing, is making sure everyone knows what job they're doing and put them in the best spot to do that.
Yeah, that's good. That is good word. All right, well, we did promise we'd give you our number one lesson that we learned. And I'll say this, when you are running, and this is for if you're doing it, setting it up on your own and you're doing your own property, you have to factor in what stuff costs, the time, the money. But when you start managing for other people and you're co-hosting, you have to understand that you are not, you have to set a price that is fair for you as a business owner. And a fair price isn't that you're just breaking even and making no money from doing the work, because you're working and spending time, and your time is worth money. So when you are biting off a big job like this, you need to really account for what the costs are going to be. And I'm talking the drive, the U-Haul, the gas, the labor, and more importantly, the time. And think, how much time is this going to take? Am I going to have to come back and reattack? And then set that fair price and explain to the owner, hey, this is why we're charging all these prices. This is what we're going to be doing. And if you want this, high performing property with all this stuff and all the nice things that we do when we set it up, it comes at an expense, and this is what it costs. And, there might be some negotiations there, but it's coming truly from a place of, in order for you to provide that level of service, you need to have the time. In order to have that time, you have to dedicate that time, and time is money. So you need to charge a fair price, but one that compensates you for, in this case, Alex, a whole weekend spent working, and we way underbid ourselves, like I said earlier. So, and that's a lesson learned, and that's not a knock on anyone but ourselves for not, acknowledging internally, like, hey, our time is, worth more money than this. We need to think and protect ourselves. So that's our big lesson from today, is you got to make sure that you are really doing due diligence when you allocate a bunch of your time to these builds or to a management job, and understand how much time you're truly committing, and then, charge accordingly. So your business is profitable and it's a business, and you're not just spending your time working for less than a McDonald's worker flipping burgers. Yeah, that would be it, Alex. And I don't think it's been a while since we've done a video together in this forum. So I've upgraded my YouTubery skills now, and I can put fancy videos in the corners. So why don't you, Alex, pick a corner that you want the video to be in?
How about this one right here?
Okay, so you're saying you want a video here. Perfect. Okay, so somewhere on this side, there will be a video that's gonna help you figure out what to do after you've built the property. So we spent the whole video talking about the build, some lessons learned, build remote setups and builds. Well, this video that Alex just pointed to right up here, hit it one more time, Alex. That's gonna be a video that shows you how to set up the actual listing on Airbnb from the backside computer stuff. So we'll cover all those bases there. That's all I got, Alex. Thank you. Thank you for debriefing that with me. And thank you guys for listening. Hope it helps. All right, take it easy.
All right, see ya.